Hello everyone, and welcome back to another week of hand lettering. I'm going to go ahead and start with just reviewing some rules that we went over last week. And so we're going to talk a lot about downstrokes, we're going to talk about connecting letters, and we talk about having fun. And so I'm going to do a little bit of review about the downstrokes and connecting the letters, but if you feel like this video is going too fast, remember you can always watch it tonight, and then I will post it again on YouTube so you can go back and practice. And also I encourage you to watch our video from last week, which is on YouTube as well. And I go into more depth with some of the letters that we might not practice a lot tonight. So again, just to review, downstrokes, those are going to be when you're going down on a letter, those are going to be your thicker strokes. So as you see here in the parts that have the thicker section, those are the downstrokes of the words. Connecting letters is just when you connect one letter to the next and make that like in cursive. And then having fun, just to reiterate that this is about your lettering. Don't compare it. It changes, and over time, you develop new ways of doing things. So just have fun, and I encourage you to share your posts, your practice pages, and tag Blue Peak Designs. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to do some review letters. So if you were not here last week, just to let you know, I usually use the Broadline Crayola markers, and I have a lot on hand because markers do dry out as you are lettering, so I have those. If you have a different marker, that's totally fine. I also sometimes like to have a pencil and an eraser just in case I need to do something and I'm not 100% confident with it. I might write it in pencil, then go over with marker and then erase. So some of our review letters we're going to work on this week are going to be the first letter is going to be A. So I like to make a line. Again, it doesn't have to be a straight line. And I'm going to go ahead and make that letter A. We worked on this last week a lot. So again, if you need to go back and practice, I go into a little bit more in depth in our last video. But you make the C kind of like that. And then I make a curve down. So I'm going to go around onto that baseline and then drop the stem underneath the baseline. I'm going to go back and fill in our downstroke. So that's the letter A. Also a reminder, if you do not have a fat marker that you can go in and make a dark downstroke section, you can just draw the lines in and then go back and color them in later. Another letter that we're going to review is an H. And so for the H, we go around, we go down, and then back up for the hump. And so you can color it in like this, make the line, fill it in, or you can just press hard with the tip of your pen and make the downstroke fatter. We are going to work on some new letters today, and I will slow down and go into a little bit more in depth of how to make those. But again, these are just review letters from last week. For an O, we're going to start in that midline, go around like this. And the thing to remember about the O is that when you're going around, you want this top section to overlap your downward stroke right here. It creates just a little bit more of a fancy effect. And then I'm going to fill in this downward section here. And then also around here. And remember, with the O, you want your downward stroke here to kind of taper off and it gets skinnier as it goes out. Another review letter is going to be an S. This is how I make my S's. But remember, you can also choose to make your S any way that you'd like. So some people I showed last week like to make their S's like this. So it's a little bit more rounded and curvy. Or you can make a traditional S like that. And this tail that comes through is how you're going to connect the letter. That's why it would be, that's why it kind of crosses through like that. Another review letter is a T. So we're going to start at the top. We're going to go down. I like to go under the baseline and back up. and then color that in to make the thicker downstroke. And remember, you can do any sort of crossbar that you like. And then our last review letter is going to be a Y, and there were many variations of this letter last week. I will show you 2 of them that we practiced. So to make the Y, you're going to go down and kind of have an angle, diagonal up, and then when you go down, you kind of curve around. And so this tail part was the part that we had some variation in last week, and you can choose the one that you like the best. This is how I typically do my Ys, but last week some people really liked doing their Ys with a curve around like that. And this would work well at the end of a word, because you're not having to connect that Y to anything, and you don't need to fill the space right here with a letter. So that would be something you could do. So these are our review letters. Again, if that was really fast for you, I apologize, but I know we have some people here from last week, and I want to make sure to move on to some new letters. So if you are having any difficulty with these, you can go back and check our YouTube video from last week. My YouTube is just Blue Peak Designs, and I think I labeled it Hand Lettering Tutorials Stay Home. So you can search that, and I go into more depth of how to make these if they're tricky for you. But this week, we are going to work on some new letters, and we're going to be able to write a new phrase today, and that's our goal at the end of this. So here are our new letters. The letters that we're going to work on today are C, U, N, D, and I. I'm going to teach you how to make those letters. And this orange marker is not working, so I'm going to switch to this one. All right, so again, you're going to want to make your baseline. It just helps guide your writing, and you can envision that you have that midline there, and if you needed to draw in that top line, you could certainly do that as well. If you do not need a line, you don't have to put one in. So the first letter we're going to make is a C, and honestly, I started the same way that I would do my A. I just kind of start here at a little bit above the midline. I go around and back up at an angle. Start above the midline, go around and back up at the angle. I would practice a few of these. Sometimes I also, when I fill it in, you can do it like that. I like to add like a little flare at the tip. It just adds a little bit of something extra onto it. You can even do it when you're going to write it, like that. So go back and fill them in. If you are wanting to learn how to do this, with not going back and filling it in, but having that deep pressure applied when you are writing, you are going to, whenever you feel your marker going downward, so that downstroke, you're going to put more pressure. So for instance, I'd start here, I go around with light pressure, and then I'm starting to go downward, so I'm going to apply more pressure, and then as I go up, I'm going to provide less pressure. So starting here, more pressure, and then I go up. So that's a way that you could do that as well. With the dashes, and then they kind of look like G's, but this is a C. Our next letter that we are going to practice is going to be the letter U. This letter should look very familiar if you were with us last week, and it's actually very similar to the Y. So if you had your midline in there, I'm going to start right above the midline. I'm going to go down and kind of go up at an angle. And then I'm going to go down again like I'm going to make an A. So I'm going to make that stick and go back up. So it starts like a Y and ends like an A. Starts like a Y and it ends like an A. So you could practice a few of those. Like that. And the little tails on the end, reminder that we have those on the end so that when we go to connect our letters, we have something to connect them to. So that is our U. The next letter, I have to switch pages. The next letter that we're going to practice is going to be the letter N. I'm going kind of fast tonight, but I have something fun. We're going to try writing our phrase. I've chosen "you can do this" because we are all in this together. And so we're going to write that 2 different ways tonight. So I wanted to kind of go quickly so I can show you 2 different ways that you'd be able to practice writing this week. So our next letter is going to be an N. And for the N, you can start it off in a variety of ways. You can start it by having a tail and going like that. Or you can not have a tail and just go straight down and around like that. So when I do this, I like to make a stick down to the baseline. Then I pick my pen up, because remember, in hand lettering, picking your pen up is going to allow you to be able to make precise letters. Unlike normal handwriting, when you are in that fluid motion, it's going to be difficult to get the types of flow that you want in your hand lettering. So I'm going to make a stick down. I'm going to start in the corner. I'm going to go up, down, under the baseline, and then back up. When I go back to color it in, this is my downward stroke. So that's going to be the thicker part. And then this part that goes around, I'm going to make thick too, because that is also a downward stroke. So down, up. And then if you wanted to make one with the tail on the end, you just add that in like that. And then do your down, then the hump, and back up. I'm going to go back and color those in. And then just a reminder that when you're filling in your ends, you can determine if you have more space on the inside, go ahead and put your downward stroke or the thicker part on the inside. Or if you feel that you have a lot of space on the outside, you can go ahead and put your downward stroke on the outside. Like that. All right. Our next letter that we're going to practice is going to be a D. And the D has a few variations as well. So I'm going to show you 3 different Ds, and then I'm going to show you the one I do most often. So for a D, I'm going to start the same way I would an A. So it's that C, then you close it off. And then instead of making that stick down, a D goes up. So we're going to think about making a loop around and down. And when you're making your Ds, you often want to think about the space that you have when you're writing your word and how much space you have within what you're formatting. Because when you make the loop, it's going to make all of your letters higher, and you want to make sure you can fill in the space. So I'll show you. An example is you can make a D with a loop like this, and then come straight down under the baseline and back up. You could make a D, so again, start it off like the C and close it off like you would an A. You can make a D where, say you have something up top and you need it to go out a little bit more, you could widen it up like that. So once you make the loop, you come down and up the same way you would on this one. Or if you want to make it even more fancy, you could do the same beginning motion with that C, closing it off like you would an A. And then you make a loop this way. So I'm going to start over here. I'm going to go around. And now I'm going to make the loop back down and up. So those are all different ways that you can make a D. I'm sure there are many more, but these are the 3 ways that I like to make Ds. These are the ones I do most often, but I do find myself doing this depending on if I have some extra space over on this side when I'm making a phrase or hand lettering something. This little tail adds it helps fill in that space. So if you wanted to go back and do your downward strokes for this, the D, it's going to be right here. It's going to be your stick down. Same thing here. And then this one, since it's all the way out here, you just have to think about, if you're air writing, where your marker starts to go down, where your hand starts to turn to go down. So that's about right here in the middle, and I go straight down. And then for this one, again, this part's going to be the same, and then I would do the same thing. So this actually does go down here. You can make this part fatter, but I typically don't because I like the tail part to be skinny. So I go around, and at that same part here, I go down. I do like this D, and I find myself using this D a lot in the winter. I think it just kind of looks like wind and snow. I don't know. I just like that D. So I'll just make one more regular one like this. And that's the D. I think we might practice today. Yeah, that's the one we're going to do today. Like that. And then our last new letter that we are going to practice is probably the most simple letter there is. It's going to be an I. So you can make your I with stick and a little connecting part right there. So I just started at the top, midline, down to the baseline, and then I curve up. Or you can make it with a little tail on it. And I like this because if you practice it the way I'm going to do it, it's going to help when you're connecting your letters for you to understand where you would connect it. So I'm going to start here and then down and up. So I just make a little I like that. If you're applying the pressure instead of going back and filling in your downward strokes like that, you would just have a light stroke. You'd press harder with your marker tip and back up. And even on that, see, I kind of messed it up here, so I'm going to go back and fill that in. And then typically, I do not put the dots on my hand lettering until I have gone through and lettered everything, because I want to make sure that I fill in the space and it's in the correct spot. So right now I will dot them, but that's just a little pointer. Like that. All right, so those are our new letters that we practiced today. We practiced C, U, N, D, and I, and we are going to go back and practice these. Any of you that are watching, are there any of these letters that you needed extra practice on right now, or do you feel like you'd just be able to go back and look at them on your own to practice? You can just let me know. I'm going to switch markers too so that I can have a fresh marker. All right, no one's saying anything, so I'm just going to keep going. All right, so our word that we're going to practice, our phrase, is you can do this. I do see that someone said the O is a little bit more difficult. So I'll go back here.
People are saying O.
I know, I can read it. Thank you. My husband's coming down to let me know that people need help with the O. So I have this. For the O, I'll go back and practice. Put that midline in. And think about when you are making a regular O, I guess I don't know how you would make it, but I normally start at the top and I go around and connect it. The thing that is different about hand lettering is you're going to start your O in the mid part. So you're going to start the O here, go around, kind of like you're making the letter U. This one's not going to be very good the way I'm holding the pen, and you're going to go up and around, so like you're almost making a complete circle. And on this part here, I'm going to extend it out, make a loop out, around, and come through this part. So I'm going to go around and through. That one looks kind of goofy because the way I was holding it. But so think, make a U, around, go out and through. A U, You go up like you're going to close it off. Keep going to extend it out and through. Make a U. Go up, around, and through. All right. And then if you were to color it in, you would just go through there like that on your downward strokes. All right, so if that wasn't enough, I'm sorry. You can message me and I can help you even more if you would like more on that. So for this part, you can do this. I am going to start with writing it in a fun way, and I'm going to mix in some print and some hand lettering cursive. So I'm going to start with the word you, and honestly, I am just going to write it how I would normally write a word. All caps, like that. So go ahead and write that. And I know that that might not look that fancy, but you can go through and you can put downstrokes in the word just regular print, or I'm going to fill in like I would do a downstroke. So I'm going to make a box there, and then I made this kind of weird, a box there. And then for an O, my downward stroke is going to be on this side. So I'm going to box it in like that. And then for the U, I'm going to box this left side in and then the outside part of the stick. You could leave it like this. You could color them in. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to make small dashes across and kind of fill it in that way. There's no fanciness to this. I'm just trying to evenly space out the dashes. And as my letter curves, I kind of curve my pen as well. Kind of fill them in. And if you mess this up, just go through and fill them in with a thicker pen. But that's one way you could write the word you. And then we're going to write the word can. And this time we're going to do this in cursive. And so today we practiced the C and the N. And then for the A, we practiced last week. If you feel like you still need to put in those that baseline, go ahead and take your pencil and draw it in so you can go back and erase it. So you can draw that in. And then I'm going to write the word can. So remember the C, we start above the midline, go around and angle up like that. And then for the A, we're going to kind of make that same motion. And then I'm going to extend my stick below the midline and come up. And then for the N, for this one, I'm not going to put the extra tail on the N because it's connecting to another letter. I typically would only do that if the N was the first letter of the word. So I'm going to make a straight stick down so it kind of connects here in the middle. Pick up my pen, make the hump, and then go out. I tried to keep these on the same line, but you can tell the N does go a little bit lower, and that's okay. So then I'm going to go back and fill in. These downstrokes here. And then I want to make my C a little bit more fancy, so I'm just going to add in that little tick mark there. So you can, and if you want right now, you can go back through and erase that line, or you can leave it into the very end, or if you didn't draw one, that's okay. I typically don't draw one either, but if you're just learning, it's nice to kind of follow. So you can. And then our next word is do. And this word is a small word, and so I'm going to make it smaller on my page here, and I'm just going to write it right here in the middle, like that. And you might be thinking that's kind of weird. It's much smaller than the rest, but then this is where you can kind of add some artistic flair in. So you can go ahead and you can draw lines like this. Someone asked, is this recorded? So I can do this later. I'm going to upload it to YouTube. So yes, you can check back later and do it if you just want to watch it right now, or just check back later and you can find the link. I will post it tomorrow. So I added in these brackets or lines like this. You could also do something like this if you wanted to. So if you had the word do, you could add in some squiggle lines like that if you wanted to. You could add some arrows. So have them going the opposite way. You could do like a thick line like that if you wanted to. Squiggly lines. Maybe something like this. So there are many options that you could do to make, to fancy that up, but that's just something. These are easy to put in. Then the last word we're going to do is the word this. And we're going to get real fancy on this one, so bear with me. I know you can do it, so we're going to just give it a go. So the first thing I want you to do is we are going to just draw our T. And so I'm going to make this go down pretty low. So I'm going to make it long and go back up like that. Now, oh, that's my dog. I'm sorry, she's barking. Here, go outside. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we are going to connect our cross for our T into the loop of the H. Now I know you're going to think, wow, that's getting a little too fancy, but just watch how I do it and then you can give it a go. So if you're thinking about your letter H, which let me find where I had it. Okay, so if we have the letter H, it has a loop here. The only thing that you're doing when you're connecting it to the letter T is you are extending this little loop right here. So we're going to start here. I'm going to go around and make a loop. And on my way down, I have to think about this part needs to connect here. So I'm going to go down like that. So if you missed that, we're going to start all the way out here on the T. We're going to go around, back up, and then down for the normal H. And then I'm going to fill it in like that. And then I'm going to make my I. So since this comes all the way up here, to make the I, I'm not going to put that fancy little tick on it this time because, again, it's not the first letter, and it might just look kind of goofy here. So I'm just going to start my I right here, and I'm going to go down and back up. And then what I notice is that I have a lot of space right here. And so I could do my traditional S, which I said I'd do like that. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to do an S like this. I apologize for the noise. My dog is outside, so she's coming in. All right, so I'm going to start my S. And when you connect your S's, when you do them like this, they just sometimes, they have to connect somewhere in here. So I typically like to start my S up here and have it connect in that mid first little loop around. I'm going to go around and up. So I filled in some space up here, and then I filled in this space down here, like that. So when I go back, I'm going to put in my downward strokes. So for this one, I'm going to go on the outside and fill that in. For this one, as you can see where I connected the letter, I kind of have some like overlapping here. So I'm going to want to fill that in. So that's the part that I'm going to do the downward stroke on. For this letter, I have a lot of space right here. I didn't space that out very well. So I'm going to do my downward stroke on the outside there. And then this one, again, I have that overlapping here. So that's where I'm going to put my downward stroke to cover that up. And then as you see here, I did not even connect it. So I'm going to go around. I'm going to make this part thicker. And I'm going to go down. This is still thick. And then it starts to thin out as it goes up, like that. And then I have some space right here. So for this one, I would suggest adding in some, you could add in like a little flare if you wanted to. You could add some little like frilly things here. Or as you see, I kind of got a little too close there. So if I was to redo this, I'd probably move this out a little bit. But you can practice that. That's mixing the print with the cursive script font. So you could do that. And now I'm going to practice another one and show you. And this one is completely in cursive. I'm going to also switch out my marker so that I have a fresh marker. As you can see, I was practicing that from last week. So turn my paper over and get ready. I'm going to use blue. And again, we're going to do, you can do this again, but this time we're going to do it in cursive. So if you just want to watch, you can and go back later and do it. Or if you're following along, I'll try to go slow. So I'm going to start, I always also like to start in the middle of my paper, somewhat in the middle because I don't know how far I need to come out and I just want it to be centered so that I can make sure I have enough space. So since my first letter is a Y, I know that I'm going to have that tail, the loop part, that's going to extend. And so I need to think about where that's going and how much space I'm taking up. So I'm going to make my Y start like this, and then I'm going to go around and loop it out like that. So I kind of extended it out past the first downward stroke there. And I like to end my little Y tail right there. Then I'm going to make the O, and I know you guys said that this is your hard letter, so remember that you're going to make the U first, and then around and through. Someone said use purple. I would use purple. It's my favorite color, but I practiced using purple today, and it's not working very well. So if you have purple, use purple and tag me because I love purple so much. So I'm going to make my O, and I'm going to start midway. And I kind of went above the Y to kind of give a little bit more of a fancy look. And then I'm going to make the letter U. And the U starts just like the Y does. And then I notice that I do have a lot of space here. So I'm going to want to bring this little tail down just a little bit more like that. And it just adds a little bit more of a fancier pizzazz to the letter or to the word. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to add in those downward strokes. There. Remember for the Y, when you're adding in that downward stroke, try to put it on the outside so that you don't fill in this cool little triangle space that you made here. So you're going to want to go down, and as you go around, it's going to get thinner because you start to go up. So with a fatter marker, it is kind of hard to do in a one little swoop. So you might have to go back and fill in to make it even. And then it kind of goes down again, so I make it thicker again and then back up. For the O, I'm going to make it thick here. This part stays thin because it is an upward stroke, and then this part is a little bit thicker. And then right here, I didn't do a very good job of connecting it, so I always say, hide your mistakes. So I'm going to make my downward stroke out there, leave this part thin, again, leaving this triangle shape you've made here and extending that downward stroke to the outside of the U. So there's the word U. Our next word is can, and I want to try to fit the word can within this space. So I will extend a little bit below the tail of the Y, but I'm going to try to fill in this space. That's what I'm focusing on, because if I started it down here, we're going to have this big chunk right here that's going to look really goofy. So I'm going to focus on filling this space the best that I can in this area. So I'm going to write the word can, and I'm going to start it here. And what you can do is if you see that you have a lot of space up here, remember, hand lettering, you can have bouncy. So you can have your letters not follow that same baseline. They can go up higher or lower, and it just creates a more unique and personalized look. So I'm going to make my A up here a little bit. I'm going to come down, and then I'm going to make my N lower. And I know that my hump of my N might hit this U. So I need to pay attention to that as I'm writing it. So I'm going to go back, add in my downstrokes. I want to thank you guys again for joining me. This is really fun. I like doing something different each week. I have watched, embarrassing enough, I've watched all 9 seasons of One Tree Hill. I've already seen it, but it's a great show. So if you have Hulu, I encourage you to watch it. I'm on the last episode, so I will be finishing that when I'm done with this. But it is nice to do something a little bit different. I do see that I have some space here. So if you remember, I like to add those little tick marks on my C. So I'm just going to add that in there. Just fills in the space a little bit. You don't have to add that, but you can. And then the next word is do. And remember, the D is like this. Ooh, people, OC, love the OC. That was such a high school show. I love it. Gossip Girl, oh, Molly, I love that show. I've watched that through a few times. And yes, One Tree Hill. It's just such a good show. And I never watched it when I was in high school, which is so sad. So now I'm here 30 years old and I'm watching it. So you can, and then do. So, what I was showing you, sorry, got sidetracked by my TV shows. The D's. You need to think about the type of tail or loop you're going to put on your D. So if I'm looking at this space right here, I know I want to fill in the word do, and I have some room here to extend that tail or loop for the D. So I am going to utilize that space. And I have a plan in mind, and you guys are following my plan, so it might be hard for you to kind of think like, what the heck is she doing? But trust me, I have a plan. We're going to be able to fill in all of our spaces. So for the word do, I'm going to start down here, and I'm envisioning how tall and where the tail of my D is going to go. So I kind of want the tail to fill in this little part right here. So I'm going to start the D here. And this is where, if you're new, using a pencil is really helpful. Just trying to figure out your spacing and what you'd like to do. All right. So I just wrote the word do like that. And I know that there's this open space here, but we're going to fill it up. You could have also made that fancy D. That would fit really nicely into this part because it's the outside letter. You could have done the D around like that and then gone in. That would have looked really nice. So you could fill in your downward strokes. If any of you are doing true calligraphy and pushing down for your downward strokes and applying them more pressure, kudos to you. That is a much harder skill to learn and takes a lot more practice. So very nice job doing that. I still go back and color in, and plus using a Crayola marker, it is kind of difficult to achieve that, but possible. So you can do, and then what we're going to do is we are going to do the fancy this again, where we connected that T and the H. So before I go in and doing it here, I'm going to show you one more time. So I had the T like this, and then to connect it, I draw the tail. I'm going to draw the tail in and around and back down. So I'm going to start here, around, and then on my way down, I need to try to connect it to here. So coming down to connect it. So I made that T. If you're going to cross your T, you're thinking about that. And then the H, we come around and down. If you are really struggling with this, you do not have to connect them. You could easily make a T, then you could connect your H like this and just cross your T. So don't feel like you have to connect it. I just wanted to show you again. And that is what we are going to do. So if you can see, we have this big space right here that needs to be filled in. And lucky for us, the word this has two tall letters that go above that midline. And so those are is a perfect opportunity to fill in that empty space. I know I don't want both of my letters to fill in that space, so I'm just going to focus on the tip of the H filling in some of this space. So I'm going to make my T start here, and I'm going to go down like that. And then when I go to make my H, I see that I have a lot of space over here and I have a lot of space up here. So I'm visualizing that tail of the cross part of my T into the loop of the H and coming back down. I'm visualizing that in my head before I go and I try to connect it. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go up, around, like that. So I started out here, around, and back down. And then I'm going to make my H, connect my I, and then for this one, I'm going to do my traditional S that I like to do. Like that. I kind of messed up. Something's on my countertop. It moved my pen. But that's okay. So even though I feel like I messed up on this S because I'd like it to go out a little bit more, that's where I'll just put my downstroke in to kind of fill in that space that I wanted to. So now that I'm going to go back, I will fill in those downward strokes. And I'm going to go on the outside of my S here, like that. And then if there are any areas that you feel you need to go back because your marker was drying out, you can go ahead and do that. Or if you'd like to make your lines a little bit thicker, you can go back. And then I'm going to dot my I. So see, this is where you can decide how high you want to make your dot, where you really want to put it. Sometimes if you dot your I before you put your downstroke in, it might be on the opposite side. So I just like to do that afterwards. But looking at my final product here, I still see that I have some space here, maybe a little bit here, and some here. If you did that fancy D, you probably don't have space here, but there is some openings. So like I said last week, just add in some little flares. So you could do something like that. Down here, I'm gonna add some flare up here just to balance it out. And then because I don't have a fancy D, I'll do it like that. So there is my You Can Do This hand lettering for this week. This was my original one. I think this one's a little bit better. That's how I practiced it earlier. I like how that takes up, there's not as big of a gap here. But see, the more you practice, the better it gets and you learn different things. So if you notice, my O, I know that was challenging for some of you. This time I decided to go up and this time I went out and it did create a different look. It filled in that gap there and that's what I should have done. So just practice and see what you can do. I really would love for you to tag Blue Peak Designs in your work. I love seeing you practice. And don't get discouraged if you can't get it. Message me. I'd love to help you. If there's something you would like me to hand letter next week, I think I'm just going to go ahead and go live every Thursday at 8. So if there's something you'd like me to hand letter next week, let me know. A couple of you did message me and say to do like peace or prayer. I can tell you P's are a hard letter, so I'm kind of steering away a little bit from that right now, and maybe I'll do those in a few weeks. But they are a more tricky letter to do, and I'm trying to connect them. So thank you so much. Remember, always have fun. Don't compare yourself and just really enjoy what you're doing. So thank you so much for joining. Go ahead and binge watch those shows and let me know what you're watching and tag us. And again, I will put this video on YouTube. Have a great night.